As we welcome you back to Buffalo Wild Wings, it's the interactive portion of the show where our fans get to ask Coach Farrell some questions, and let's get our first one from the audience.
Coach, during the game, a lot of fans were asking about the inclement weather rules and what happens when there's lightning and rain. Could you please explain to us what that is?
So good question there. Obviously, weather is always a factor in southern Louisiana.
Well, again, I go back to this level, which is so important in the United States, and we travel so far. So Birmingham come down, 5.5 hours, 6 hours, stay overnight to play a game, and we, very important for soccer in the country. But at the end of the day, we live in a part of the country where they can't stay over 2 or 3 days and play a game the next day. So what the rules are that if the lightning strike is within a certain distance, and we have a monitor out there, an app that will tell us how close it is, we have to inform the referees, and the referees call a timeout basically. So, and that's for 30 minutes, and it continues for 30 minutes every time if you can't restart the game. If the game cannot be restarted in the same day that the game started in, then the league will call the game at that point. If the game is in the second half, the result stands. If the game is in the first half, the game has to be replayed. So they'll have to come back another day and play. So that's basically what it is, and it's standard across the United States. U.S. Soccer recommends this. The NPSL accepts this as the best way. So there's other league. Well, there's only one other league at this level in the United States. So we all accept it and we go with it. But we were 4-1 up at that time, and Birmingham didn't really have a chance of winning it.
And as bad as the forecast was going into Saturday, we almost feel fortunate that we got the window we did for the action and get a result. But it does lead to another Twitter question. Luck of the Gin asks, you looked very animated on the sidelines when the match was initially stopped. Can you share what was going on there?
Well, yeah, so at the end of the day, we obviously have a team that's going to do well this year if they keep up the performances that they've been putting in. We lost a big game in Nashville. You were there at it. And when we chased the game, we gave up goals late in the game. Could have held it 3-2 down with the -1. We were -3. We lost 5-2. Right. And the game ran away from us. I thought we had a chance to go on and score another couple of goals towards the end of the game. And I was looking down the road at, I would love to host some kind of playoffs in New Orleans. And I thought extra goals in that game might have benefited us in the rankings. And so at that particular point, when I felt the game could be played out, I was a little bit animated, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I can attest. That's about as angry as I've seen you in the time I've known you. I was a little scared to approach you, to be honest.
I like to intimidate people every now and again.
Yeah, you did a good job with me, that's for sure. Another Twitter question. This is from @the31. We are midway through the year. What are your thoughts on the season thus far, positives and negatives going forward? Oh,
the positives are we've turned it around from last year. As I told you before, it's one of the worst years we've had. Right. We brought in character, talent, desire. We brought in everything, and it's paying off in results. And mind you, this league has produced the team that has been in the final the last 2 years out of 80 teams across the country. So it's a very high level, and the scores are always very, very close, even though we had a 4-1 victory this weekend. So when you look at it, we've got a team that can compete. We've got a team that, first of all, wants to get into divisional playoffs, maybe host them. We'll look at that first. We won't look further than that. And what we do have is a mixture of local and talent that's been brought in that are producing great performances at home. And I think we've got stronger since the season started.
And your one negative?
The negative was not taking more points out of the road trip. I mean, and as I said, you were there, Paul. We could have won the Nashville game and we could have won the Memphis game. We came with 1 point out of 6, 1 tie, 1 loss. That's the negative. We can't let that happen again.
Time for another question from the audience, and it's another member of the Royal Court.
So with all the talk about promotion relegation in the United States, I would like to get what your thoughts are on whether or not that should happen, and if it does happen, how it would work.
To me, it's the most fascinating thing about world football and the Premier League is relegation. Is it a feasibility in the United States?
I think in the long term it is. The rest of the world kind of develop their sports systems a little bit different from the United States. So What we do in the United States is we follow the tradition of the franchise, where basically you buy a territory. It doesn't matter how bad you are, you won't get relegated if you're, paying the fees and doing the minimum standards. So that's Major League Soccer. And then you have, NASL, which is a community, you basically part owner of the league if you get into that and you make those rules. And I don't think they even want promotion relegation because of the investment. And I think it's a long, long way off. Do I agree with it? Yes, absolutely, I agree with it. I think that has to be the way forward. We might be dead and gone by the time it happens, but it has to be the way forward. It has to be the way forward. It has to be the way forward because it's what makes the game, so exciting. Is that and it produces a level that we need, which may even affect the national team at times. It's like our local players, they know they're always going to be in the MLS. They're not going to drop down a league. If you were in the English Premier League right now and you were in a relegation battle, you're pushing yourself so hard to stay in that league. Go down to the Championship, there, which is underneath them, and you're fighting to get back up there. And to answer the question, I think it's a long, long way off. Yes, I do agree with promotion relegation. I don't see how it works legally over here. And with the MLS, its domination, you can just have a big wig come in with a lot of money and own a territory, and it ain't going to change it.
Interesting discussion, and I've heard one idea floated: if MLS keeps expanding and they get to maybe 40 teams, you have 2 MLS levels, and one would be a higher division.
Well, in response to that, the MLS is moving in that direction. Look, I love the MLS, but why are they moving in that direction? Is it just to protect the money, or is it to really become a promotion relegation? Is it really promotion relegation?
Right.
Or is it just MLS? I mean, if the MLS, if it was another league underneath them, like the EPL is different from the Championship and La Liga is different from the Spanish second division,
right.
It really isn't. It's really a strategy to hold everybody else out and the big money people. So the local community teams will have a hard time breaking into that system. They just won't unless someone comes in with a big checkbook.
We got another Twitter question, and this is one that's going to get me a little fired up anyways. Coach, would love to hear your take on all the diving going on by the South and Central American players in Copa America. And Coach, personally, watching Copa America, it's at times hard to watch, and it infuriates me, especially when you think of how beautiful Euro 2016 is going to be. I watched the Costa Rica-Paraguay match on Saturday or Sunday. It was borderline unwatchable with all the theatrics and the diving. So what's your take on it?
Well, look, if you're going to play against a team, as we often have done from Central America here in New Orleans, we know we're going to deal with it. It's acceptable. From the refereeing standard, they understand it. If you're a Central American or South American referee, you kind of understand it. If you're a European team or a North American team playing against that, you get extremely frustrated because you hate people what you consider cheating. They don't consider it cheating. Now look, I absolutely despise diving. I absolutely despise the deception. I really think it's awful the way they try to play the referees. But, it's just cultural. It breaks down that it's acceptable in certain parts of the world, and that's the way the game's played, and you can't blame them for it because they're brought up that way, and they think that if you can get a penalty by diving and you think it's a good thing, you do it. If you can get a free kick, you do it. You can get somebody sent off or yellow carded, you do it. There's certain parts of Europe, not all of them, but certain parts of Europe are much more into being honest about the way they play. But if they did get a call for a dive that won the game for them, they'd probably take it.
They're not going to turn it
down.
So
look, to answer the question quickly, no. You just, from my perspective as a coach and a former player, when we're playing against teams from those areas, we have to know that's going on and we have to play that as well. And from their perspective, they think that's just part of the game.
And let's be fair, non-soccer fans in America point to that as one of the reasons they won't watch soccer. But guys are flopping in the NBA all the time, so it's not just a soccer issue. At least in the NBA, they've taken measures to try and take that away. Time for one more audience question.
So we see now that after the storm, you've really rebuilt the Jesters. You see that you have an academy for the children, you have a large community service basis, and now we have a very large royal court. Where are you trying to go with the Jesters from here?
Great question from Casey.
Yeah, I think it's a super question. So we're in an area that wasn't overly, the United States wasn't really looking at it. I've been here for over 20 years. watching young kids come through. We've obviously had Patrick Mullins and Andrew Tarbell go on to MLS. I think we've been a very important part of that. But overall, it's really about our passion for the game and building a structure that we build a foundation for the future. Something's going to happen here in the future. It might happen tomorrow. It might happen 10, 15 years from now. But we got to do it right. We got to do it. It's not going to be about money. It's not going to be about people's pockets. It's got to be about creating a pathway for our young players from New Orleans to make it to the top. And that's the passion that drives just about everybody that's involved in our organization. The first thing we look at is not just how much money can we make here, we can run this, run that. No, we want to really, truly get behind people and see if we know we have the talent. And that's been the driving force behind it. So long term, yeah, of course, either us or somebody else, we want this full-time professional team here. We want the NPSL team that is vitally important to the academy. And then we want to keep producing the players and training them the right way so that they can play at the highest level and that they do actually learn the game correctly.
Another great round of questions from our fans both here at Buffalo Wild Wings and on Twitter. Now coming up next on the Jesters Court, we will look at the week ahead and joke around with longtime Jester Fabian Largaspada.
You got to prove yourself to make it in America. It doesn't matter where you came from. I heard that I'd never make it, but I proved them wrong.
My name? You can call me Soccer.